we kind of know where.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Go Deep with Kat and Sarah. Today we are going to explore, we're not sure where, so we're going to find out. And you were telling me, Kathleen, this week how you noticed that you didn't notice
Yes.
that you were caught up in your thinking, and you must have noticed by now, because you're not still caught up in your thinking, or we wouldn't be talking. You would have missed our podcast entirely.
Yeah. So I didn't tell you the specific details of what happened, but I was buying into a thought, and then I was layering more thought upon that thought, and I was feeling it, and I was very uncomfortable, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it for 24 hours because the thought looked true. And so maybe it would be helpful. So one thing that I thought would be a good idea to share on this podcast is that you and I are pretty darn good coaches. Coaching from this inside out paradigm. I mean, we're pretty good. And yet we can be seduced. We can be hooked. I felt like, like I took the bait, and the story I was making up, it just looked so real. So what happened was, the Monday before Thanksgiving here in the US, so a week ago today, I'd been over spending some time with my mom in the afternoon, and I left. Her physical therapist was on the way for a home visit. And a couple hours after I got home, she called me and she said, "Oh, sweetie, I'm putting you on alert." And I was like, "What do you mean putting me on alert?" She said, "Well, the therapist took my blood pressure and it was high enough that he wasn't allowed to do any physical therapy with me, but it's probably not high enough that I need to go to the AR, but I don't want to have a stroke." And my mom's a retired nurse, so, she kind of gets it all. And I said, "What's the pressure?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't think you need to go." But I'm telling you what, it was like pushed my hot button. I'm like, "You're putting me on alert?" I was so mad. I was like, it's 6 o'clock at night. I'm thinking, can't you call an ambulance? What about somebody else that lives up there? And I'm spinning up in my head, feeling the thinking of the inconvenience and the unfairness of it. And I'm angry. And then the next thought that comes up is like, oh my gosh, am I a terrible daughter? I can't believe that I was thinking that. I cannot believe, because of course I would, if she called me at midnight, I'd get in the car and I'd go get her and I'd take her to the emergency room. So I am a good daughter. Why am I thinking those terrible thoughts and I'm getting angry? And it's just like, it took me 24 hours to go, the whole thing is made of thought. The whole thing has no truth to it whatsoever. Good daughter, bad daughter, terrible thinking, awful person. How could me, a good person, made up concept, made of thought, right? Good, bad, right, wrong, right? The whole ball of thought that looked so real. And I felt this compassion the next day for the clients that we work with, until they see it, how stressful, how anxiety filled, how raise your own blood pressure. When we don't recognize that we are creating our experience with the energy of thought. And I did it. Like I fell for it. And I calmed myself down within a couple hours because I kept saying, well, of course I'll go. But I still hadn't really seen what I saw the next day was that the whole thing was made of thought. And none of it was true. And none of it was anything that I could have touched and put in a box and wrapped up with a bow. It wasn't even a thing, but it sure looked like this thing. So I just think, one, I want our listeners to know that even us, we can be seduced and hooked by our own thinking. And I just, I just have this deeper level of seeing how it all works and a deeper level of compassion for people who don't see it and don't, become settled by realizing how that whole experience was created.
Yeah. You said, oh, I fell for it. And it occurred to me that it genuinely feels to me like, well, you were just exercising your use of the gift of thought. And then you woke up to yourself. And some people don't know that's how it works, but it is just how it works. So yes, even us, even anyone who deeply knows how it works, you're gonna create something with thought, and that's kind of how it works. And
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing that I need to fix.
no, it's nothing to do.
It's just how the human experience is. And but when we're kind of onto it, maybe I would have been able to laugh about it a little because I did. The next day I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of funny.
But yeah, life gets way more fascinating and interesting when you see how it works. And if we're talking about how we create our reality from the inside out, it if reality was genuinely created from the outside in, then your feeling around the whole circumstance would never change until your mom's blood pressure came down, and until you'd convinced yourself you were a good daughter or something like that. But
Yeah.
we've all had experiences, even people who are not really aware of it. We've had experiences of being really worried about something, and then it falls away in a second.
Yeah.
Because we stop thinking about it, or we settle, we're doing something else, or whatever, but it drops away in a second and you're like, oh, that wasn't real.
Right. That is so right.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about, I mean, I think for me, it was like good daughters don't have thoughts like that. Well, apparently they do. Apparently, because the thought isn't mine. Like thoughts arise,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not real things anyway. And they definitely don't define who we are. We aren't our thinking.
Yeah. So I haven't told you this yet, but today's Monday, Wednesday last week, I was in a little car accident. And I nobody was hurt. My car is still, it's waiting to be towed. So it's not, I drove it away from the accident, but it's going to require a fair bit of work. But only my right wrist hurt, nothing else. Like my neck didn't even hurt. It was fairly low speed on the highway where all of a sudden the car stopped and it's bang, bang, bang. Anyway, what was so interesting about it was I had very little thinking about just the fact that I was in a car accident. And I kept forgetting that it happened. And there was things to do. I had to go to the collision center and report it to the police. And I had to call the insurance. And I literally just kept forgetting, oh yeah, I have to do that. But I didn't really forget. I remembered in the moment when I needed to do it. But I had, because I had no thinking about it, well, there was two sort of aspects. I had a lot of adrenaline because it was enough of an impact that there was a level of like, I kind of call it body thought, like my body thought I was in danger. And so it was producing a lot of adrenaline. And so by the time I got home, I'd started shaking and I was freezing cold and there was a lot of physiology going on and I was out of breath and and I kept trying to like, it was like the adrenaline was looking for a thought to attach itself to or something. And it kept feeling like, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. No, that's not right. And the actual accident, the thing that happened, didn't look either good or bad. It looked so neutral. Just if I didn't decide that it was a bad happening, it wasn't. But this adrenaline kept wanting to go somewhere, I guess. It was a really interesting experience because there was a lot of adrenaline, but very little thought.
I think that is so cool. No, here's what I think is so cool, because that can be so relatable to anybody listening who has a change in the physiology of their body in response to, I didn't get a good night's sleep last night. I am dehydrated because I didn't drink enough water yesterday. Okay, then like, it may be adrenaline, it may not, or somebody like going out to the mailbox and they don't see the curb and they step off and their ankles, maybe itty bitty sprained or something. But if it's neutral, like the accident, like if we don't use our creative power of the ability to think and create meaning and layer, like that's what it sounds like to me. Like physiology was upregulated and something's happening in the body because physically something happened to you, and then the something is like trying to attach a meaning to it or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was it like that? Because I know we as humans tend to do that. Like, oh my gosh, did I break my ankle? Did I fracture my foot when I stepped off the edge of the, like, oh my gosh, how much does it hurt on a scale of 1 to 10? How bad is it? Oh, should I run in and put some ice on it? Like, and I didn't hear you doing anything like that.
It was more because a couple times I noticed myself going into almost like, well, most people would think this was bad. Maybe I should think this and this and this. And then it was like I watched myself, no, it's not really true. And coming back to neutrality. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. It was just that it didn't look like enough to upset myself. It was just without any meaning put on it. It was entirely neutral. And when I needed to do something, it occurred to me to do it. Like I took a couple Advil before going to bed because I wondered if I was going to have whiplash the next morning. Turns out I didn't. I put some ice on my wrist and I put some ice on my neck, and because it occurred to me, I ate some food. It just was kind of boring.
Okay, tell me if it sounds to me like you were just present in every now moment. and not projecting into the future, looking for meaning, like aware of the physiology in your body and just present with it. And then knowing if there was something to do or not. And that it was neutral, meaning that it just, you were just present to what is, not what isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see myself, because I talked about, I went into different thoughts every now and then and came back out of them. But it was almost like I was starting to construct little realities about it. And then, no, that doesn't feel good. Why would I do that? No. And right before the accident, I had a thought that I should get off at the previous exit. So there was an exit on the highway where I could have got off, and it was literally right after where we all hit each other. And so I found myself it going into, well, I should have listened to that voice. But then that didn't feel good. I thought, well, I didn't. And there was no reason for me to get off at that exit. So it even in thinking I ought to have done something different, it was making that event bad. Like, oh, in order to avoid that. But it didn't even, it looked funny or almost silly, like, well, it happened, so obviously I didn't avoid it. Or why would I care after the fact? Yeah. It might have been nice if I got off at that exit. But I wouldn't have even known that and maybe that accident wouldn't have happened if I wasn't there, like I wouldn't have known. I would have wondered, why did I get off? I might have berated myself for getting off the wrong exit. but yeah, it was entirely neutral. So I started to see and look at the neutrality of everything that happens. And we only think it's good or bad because we're putting meaning on it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I like enjoying things that are good. I like feeling that they're good. But it was interesting because it wasn't really on purpose that I was seeing this very neutral.
No, but I wonder, Sarah Joy, if the longer you and I and our clients and our colleagues, the longer you're in this conversation, the more you have experiences of things like a car accident that just kind of go down like that you're able to just have this neutrality and just be very present with what's happening and not make meaning of it, and just be with what's happening.
Yeah.
And the flip side of, and then here's this other woman on the other half of the screen called Kathleen that did this, good daughters don't have those kind of thoughts. And I had an entirely different experience of a few hours of my life that wasn't neutral. And you know what? What I didn't do was like really go to the place that I used to go about what a terrible, awful daughter, and again, it lost its charge after a couple hours. But it wasn't again until the very next day that I saw, oh, that whole thing was just made of thought. And all that's fine. Like there was a degree of presence that I was knowing what was happening. I wasn't like trying to fix myself, but I did think, anyway, there seems to be this contrast between our two experiences, and yet it's just the whole range of being human. And
Yeah.
it's, as you understand how experience is created from the inside out, it's possible to have experiences that are much less stressful, like an accident. And it's possible to have an experience that's, different than the one I had, but I had it, and I'm laughing about it now. And I did stay awake on purpose until about midnight. I didn't want to keep calling my mom, and I was fine. I rented a Netflix movie, and I enjoyed the evening because I was like, yeah, I want to be available. So in some way, that thinking, like, bad daughter, how could you possibly think that? It wasn't me thinking that. Thoughts arise, they're not us. And your experience of presence just is so beautiful.
I guess perhaps, well, overall, I'm more interested in how experience works rather than saying your experience was less good than mine or
Right.
anything like that, which you've been speaking to that as well. Where you say thoughts arise, that's what it felt like with where I was talking about. I had a lot of physical adrenaline, and even the next day when that had subsided, a couple times thoughts arose like maybe I could have avoided the accident, and if I'd gone down that rabbit hole, then that would have felt like that would have had that thinking tension feeling. And it just, as they arose, I guess I just didn't attach to them. It just looked like, it didn't look interesting. It didn't look more important than whatever, I don't know, doing the laundry I was doing or whatever I was doing in the moment, might have been being with my daughter. Yeah, it looked more interesting what was present in front of me in the moment, I think. So yeah, like you say, thoughts arise. Okay. And sometimes we get caught up with them and sometimes we don't. Okay.
Well, and I think for a future podcast, like, physiology arises, sensations and things change in the body. And we can be present with that. I would love to explore that. I would love to do an exploration around. We don't have to have thinking about that either. We can just notice what's happening in the body.
It was actually kind of fun. It was like, so some people pay a lot of money to get that level of adrenaline by skydiving or bungee jumping or something, right?
Yes.
And I had kind of an expensive level of adrenaline going on in my body. And at one point I felt really high and I couldn't stop laughing. And I said to my son, this is like a huge rush. Like, this is like a drug. And so the cost was my car.
I have to say, I'm not one of those people that would pay a lot of money to bungee jump for that adrenaline high. No.
And me neither, but it was very interesting. I made no meaning out of my physiology.
Yeah.
Okay, I recognize that I have adrenaline right now, and I actually found it hard to eat because I couldn't swallow because of the adrenaline. Like, I was really keyed up. And I thought, okay, I just have to ride this out. But other than recognizing it and saying, okay, just give it some time. Yeah. Hot.
Well, you and I work with a lot of people who don't see the value in being able to do exactly that.
Yeah.
To just be with what's happening in the body, because the body's brilliant. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do following an auto accident.
And I found myself there was three of us involved in it, and the two other people, while we were exchanging insurance information, I found myself thinking that they seemed like really nice people. And I was a little sad that I wasn't, it was like, oh, I won't get to be friends with these nice people. I felt grateful that I met nice people on the highway Wednesday night. Just so funny.
That that's an interesting way to meet new people, Sarah Joy.
It is an interesting way to meet new people. That's funny. Better than a dating app.
Well, I was gonna go there, but
Uh,
you did it for me.
I think more true is that the world is full of interesting, nice people, and we're meeting them all the time. We're just, if you're caught up in your head, you're not noticing. Mhm. Yeah, but yeah, even on the side of the road. Yeah. Well, so I guess experience happens from the inside out is our theme today. Our theme that we didn't know we had a theme.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered a few different things.
We did.
We can put a bow on it now. What do you
Okay.
think?
There's the bow. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will find exciting new deep topics for next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.